Good evening, Vancouver, and welcome back to Canucks After Dark, Monday, August 28th, the last show of August, and sort of the summer, it feels like, as we get into sort of closer to preseason, real season starting up. As always, joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. How are you doing today, Clay?
Parker, I'm doing much better than I was 2 weeks ago when we got together, because that was 2 days off of my injury, and I'm not going to milk the sympathy. I'm not going to ask people to cry me a river, but this sucks, man. I can't do stairs. I can't be the amazing athlete that I am. It's just a lot of people have it worse off than me, but I must admit it's up and down for sure. But always happy to see you and the people in the chat. How's that?
Good. Yeah, you're in better spirits than I think I would be.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
In that scenario, but no, it's good to hear you doing all right.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Moving
Anything exciting happening?
Week,
Yeah.
So I am just we're just sort of in panic mode here, but it's okay. We're able to squeeze this one in tonight.
So when you're moving, because of our show tonight, is all your tech equipment almost one of the last things to be packed up?
It'll get packed up Thursday because I have to work during the week. But
of course,
it'll be the very last thing to go for the most part.
So our next show, whenever that's going to be, either next week or 2 weeks from now, you're going to be at a brand new digs.
Yes, and it will probably look terrible for a little while. But it should look better than this door that I've had as my sort of centerpiece lately.
I don't mind
for the last few months. I don't think it's been great. But hopefully we'll have it looking pretty nice in the next couple of months or so.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're in good spirits too. Moving can be stressful, but it's also a sign of new things in your life and new chapters. So that's pretty awesome, man. That's pretty awesome.
It'll be a good time. As for topics, we've got two big ones, kind of.
I know of one.
One is the one that I posted in that's the title, basically, is this Elias Pettersson interview, which not too much surprising there, but definitely worth a conversation and definitely worth everyone panicking about. We want everyone to freak out the whole time. It's what we're going for. And then, of course, the in-arena upgrades that were made. And the new...
wreaking havoc.
Wreaking havoc is apparently... I didn't even know about this till an hour ago, but... Yeah, the new Jumbotron going up apparently 4 times the area of the original one. I'm looking at pictures. It looks bigger, but it doesn't look that much bigger if I'm just looking at it. But apparently it's way better. And apparently it doesn't work either.
Yeah.
Because there was supposed to be a Drake concert tonight and it didn't work. And so I guess it's Wednesday or tomorrow or something.
Yeah, so they're keeping tomorrow night's show and they're bumping tonight's over to Wednesday. But of course, in all seriousness, I've already seen people who have flown in, driven up from other places, and they are already planning to be heading home tomorrow. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, you have people from the island or whatever.
Yes, yeah,
definitely.
Not a big Drake guy though myself. I don't know about you. I don't know.
Not really. I went to Drake concert 7 years ago, maybe.
Ooh,
I don't know, long time ago, 2016, I think.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, but not so much anymore.
Do you dance and vibe, or you just kind of stand still?
I kind of stand there. That's
really? That doesn't surprise me for some reason.
No, I'm not the most involved.
That's awesome. Speaking of celebrating or dancing or vibing, it's Edmund's birthday today, and he thanked us for streaming on his birthday. So happy birthday, Edmund.
Yeah, happy birthday, Edmund. It was because of you, not just a Monday. But no, happy birthday. It's good to have you here.
And while we're recognizing other things, Lucas uses his monthly membership message showing he's a member, and he's been a member for 13 months. So thank you, Lucas, for being here. I know you're supposed to work the concert tonight, but small blessings. You're with us now here tonight.
Yes.
So that's good.
Yeah, you really lucked out.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you.
All right, so our marquee topic, I guess, is the interview that I guess it was Friedman that had with Elias Pettersson in Stockholm. It's a nice little fun trip, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's basically said all the right stuff. He's focused on the training and nutrition and getting strong, and he looks strong, which is good. But then he sort of, you start to look into things a little more. You think about it even before the interview, and you're like, well, he's at the end of his contract this year, right? After this year. How many more RFA years does he have? Is it 2 or is it 3?
No, after this contract ends, so this season, only 1. And then he's
only
at 7.
RFA year.
Only 1.
Wow, that's coming up quick.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah. So what that means, essentially, if you look back at Elias Pettersson's history and the things that he said in the past, right? He said that he wants to play for a contender. He's played 17 playoff games in his career, right? And that was in the bubble. There was no fans, right? He had 18 points in 17 games. He was very good. But he's never had any success, really, in his 5 seasons here. And so when he said a couple of years ago he wants to play for a contender, and you start to do the math in your head, and he had a bridge deal and 1 RFA year left after this contract expires, and you start to think, well, would you want to stick around in that case when you're going to be a very hot commodity, especially when you are a free agent and when you only have 1 RFA year left? Once this contract expires, you really you have the ability to force a hand, right? Sure, you technically do have to sign with this team if you want to play or get traded, but you can say, I'm only signing a 1-year deal, right? Carry me to free agency. And then things start to get a little bit interesting.
And that's so scary, Parker, because we know that's what basically Matthew Tkachuk did in Calgary. And then he said, sign me for 1 year because I'm not going to do any more than that. And then Calgary said, forget it, we're not waiting. And I know it's easy to think, man, the Calgary got hooped in that deal because of how good Florida did. But they got really good players in Huberdeau and Weegar, and they can still salvage that deal. But it just goes to show that Tkachuk had the hammer, and Calgary, I think they did a smart move, and they got rid of him sooner as opposed to later. Maybe they should have. No. Who knows what his stock would have been? But they didn't want it. They didn't want that drama hanging over them for the entire season.
And Huberdeau wasn't supposed to only put up 55 points this year.
Correct.
Right? Like, he's coming off a 115-point season. So that was a shock. That's, unlucky for Calgary.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, if he completely has the power to do something like that. Yeah. He said he's not going to, they haven't had extension talks this offseason. And yeah, if you hold the cards at this point, why wouldn't you, want to make sure that this team that, let's be real, over this offseason has made mostly the right moves, right?
Yep.
They've been doing what we've thought are, the things to make this team better. What if they come out and they're 10th in the West when we get to January, right? Right, and then you start to think, well, where, if you're Elias Pettersson, when does this team get competitive, right? Because he sees guys like Austin Matthews playing in the playoffs, not for super long, but playing in the playoffs. Matthew Tkachuk going all the way last year, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure he wants to do that too. So, losing sucks, right? I would totally get it if the team was bad this year and he said, no, I'd rather play somewhere else, because it's kind of fair at that point.
Oh, man, Parker, there's so many things to unpack because we can talk about Pettersson's history in contract negotiations. Remember, him and Hughes, they didn't hold out, but they certainly were in no rush to join camp 3 seasons ago or 2 seasons ago. So there's so much to unpack. But the one really interesting one to me, Parker, so I believe you and I are on the same page, is we certainly don't blame Pettersson. He's entering the prime of his career right now, and you don't want to be wasting your prime years on a team that's already shown you that 4 out of your 5 years in the league that they didn't do much. So I think we'd agree that way. But I think that there's 2 schools of thought. If he signs long-term for the 8-year max anytime before the end of the season, that is obviously, I think, what Canucks fans want the most. And you get him in his prime years, and it's his biggest contract of his life. There is a scenario, though, where he does a 3 or 4 year contract, like kind of Austin Matthews' second contract or whatever. And then, yes, it doesn't get him full, but then he could be looking to get paid twice. You see what I mean? Like a big contract now, and then another big contract when he's only 29, 30 years old. And that's still possible. And that contract, that second contract, could still be with Vancouver, but obviously the betting odds are maybe not. So that's why there's so much here. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, he'll essentially be 26 when his next contract kicks in, right? He's got a November birthday, so he'll be 25 turning 26. So yeah, if he were to sign a 4-year deal, right, then that would be a 4-year deal at like $11 million,
Sure.
$12 million, like a ton of money.
Sure.
And then, he could be 29 and then sign an 8-year, right?
Yep.
Or a 7-year until he's 36. And that would be, the cap would be higher, and that could be a ton of money, right? Then we might be talking $14, $15 million a year.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're the Canucks, you want to lock him up for as long as possible, because pretty much any number that is reasonable is going to be worth it for the Canucks, right? Like, if it's 8 digits, it's 8 digits, right? If it's $11 million a year for 8 years, it's going to pay for itself, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be valuable. Where it does get scary, though, is if he says, I want 1 year and I want, $9 million for the 1 year. And sure, in that year, you're probably getting decent value. Yeah. But then if you don't have an extension signed by March 10th or whatever the trade deadline ends up being that year, right? And then it starts, and then you start to get to the really fun part of, but the team's second in the Pacific. Yeah. Right. But he still wants to go somewhere else, or we haven't worked out a contract yet, right? And then we have to start getting into the whole, remember all the players that they never were able to trade at trade deadlines? Like Dan Hamhuis comes to mind.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously a little bit of a different caliber. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. But I mean, if you look at it, like, where do we think this team's going to finish this year? Right. We've talked about it. Somewhere in the 3rd to 5th in the Pacific range, right? Mm-hmm. And 2 of those spots probably make the playoffs, but one of them doesn't. Mm-hmm. And if you're not pretty comfortably in the driver's seat, or at least in the top 2 spots in the Pacific, maybe 3rd in the Pacific, when we do get to January, when an extension is, maybe starting to be talked about, then things start to get a little bit dicey.
You're so right. And I love the numbers you throw out there, because obviously the longer you go, the more your AAV goes up, because you're in essence committing to the team. They got to pay more to keep you. So you're right. If he signs a 1-year deal, which is the worst for the Canucks because it walks him right to UFA, but it might only, you're right, be $9 million because he's making 7.3. He signs a 3 or 4 year deal, then we're talking about 11 and a half. I agree with you. If we're talking 7 or 8, he might command 11.5 to 12 or even more, knowing that Austin Matthews just leapfrogged McKinnon and McDavid to 13.25. Salary cap's going up. Who knows? Yep. Who knows? Who knows?
Right. He might be thinking of it from a percent cap standpoint, right?
Yep.
And say, McDavid got X percent, I think like 16% when he signed, 16.7%, I think it was. He might say, okay, I want 15% of the cap. But the cap's going to be, $90 million for most of these years, so it's gonna, it's gonna have to be $13 million or whatever that math ends up being. So
yes.
Definitely. And he's going to make a lot of money wherever he goes. And I don't think money has any reason to be the concern, because he's going to get paid wherever he is, right?
Yep.
If he wants to go to a contender, maybe he's getting paid $500,000 less a year. He'll be okay, right? On a $90 million contract instead of a, $93 million contract. Yeah. But it's, if someone is in his shoes, I wouldn't blame them for having that, for taking that route.
Yeah. I think Canucks fans, for the most part, Parker, just from who I've talked to and what I've seen online, I think they in their heart of hearts, they understand where Petey's coming from. And they would, I say 9 out of 10 people would do the exact same thing, because there's no pressure. There's no deadline right now that says you have to sign. And why, for all the reasons we just talked about for the last 10 minutes, why would you sign? Why not wait? But when you're talking about your best player that you've seen in a long time, your potential, a guy who just starting to get recognized now, Selke votes, even a Hart Trophy vote. Like, this guy is on the precipice of top 10 player in the league. Gosh, do you want to see a guy like that? And I'm not trying to strike fear. I'm just kind of expressing what fans are expressing. And then if he goes, what's happening. Hughes is out the door 2 years behind him. And then you're truly rebuilding, something that the Canucks have been loath to do over the past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have like a John Tavares situation, right? Where everyone's really mad that he left, right? I mean, you look at Tavares' career in New York, right? Like, they were not good for the majority of his time there, right? They made the playoffs, I think, 3 times while he played for them for like 9 seasons. Yep. And they never made it past the second round. And so he just left in free agency and went to Toronto. Same idea where a player could play for a team for 4 years. They make the playoffs once. They've never been good enough. And he's looking and he's saying, well, I'm pulling my weight, right? I'm going out here. He put up 102 points last year. He scored 39 goals, right?
Yes.
He needs to know that they're going to build a team around him. He's had such a tumultuous time here, right? Like, how many coaches has he had, right? It's 3 now.
Yeah.
Was right. 3 coaches,
in 2
couple
years.
GMs. Like, the team hasn't been great. He experienced that whole Markstrom to Foley Tanev off season. Like, he was there too. Stuff that if we weren't indoctrinated into being Canucks fans, maybe we wouldn't be as happy anymore. But from the players' perspective.
Yeah, I want to touch on what you said about the goals. It's weird. On StreamYard, we cannot highlight this, but we can certainly talk about it. Carol coming through, gifting 5 memberships. They go to Japan for Kai, Jay, Spartan, and Abi Chalhal. So thank you, Carol, for that generosity, and thank you for keeping us going strong. That's pretty cool, isn't it, Parker?
Thank you.
Yeah, that is awesome. So thank you, Carol. Okay, you said something very important, 102 points, and PD has already gone on record saying one of his personal goals, not team goal, but personal goal, is to improve on the 102 points. Here's the difference between PD and JT Miller. JT Miller signed his extension, right? He signed it in the exact same spot that PD is now, but he was coming off a career year, 99 points, and I think it's safe to say Miller might not get to that plateau again. So he's smart. He cashes in Labor Day weekend, basically a year ago from now, and he cashes in. Whereas PD, he's saying, wait a sec, yeah, I had a good season, but I'm going to even have a better season. So why would you limit your earning power now if you think you're going to do even better?
Yeah, you know that he sees himself in the McKinnon, Draisaitl, McDavid, Matthews tier, right?
Yep.
Like, he looks at these guys and he's like, hey, McKinnon put up 111 points this year in just 71 games, right? He knows that Matthews was on 60 goal watch. McDavid puts up how many points? 140, something dumb, right? So he looks at that and he says, well, 102, he's probably thinking, I didn't have the best start to the year, right? I could have been 110 is easily within reach. And then he's probably thinking, man, if I played for a team that won more than 40 games, or how many games the Canucks were, 38 games last year. If I'm on a team that wins more games, I'm probably playing with better players and I'm probably putting up more points. Maybe I'm not having to play, 3 minutes of PK a night, right? Maybe more, right? That's 3 minutes I can play at 5-on-5 or on the power play. That's going to be more points, right?
Yes.
I'm sure he's looking at it and saying, well, why can't I score, 46 goals and have 115 points? Right, because he definitely is capable of it. If you're putting him, especially if you're putting him with some good line mates.
Yeah, exactly. Healthy Mikheyev that we've talked about before, or whatever it is. Kuzmenko obviously riding shotgun. And if the Canucks team is going to be better, sure, PD got a few shorthanded points, but seriously, if the Canucks team's better even strength, better on power play, winning more games, playing ahead more than behind, having actually an average penalty kill, you're exactly right, Parker. There's no reason why he can't get 105 to 110. I'm not sure. I have to kind of think about it before we do our predictions game, which I always get horribly crushed in. But you never know. He certainly has the talent. And if this team is going to be even moderately better than last year, you'd think that he should be able to match 102. I wouldn't say easy. It's not a slam dunk. Right. But he's got every opportunity to do so. I agree with you.
He's going to be a big part of that, right?
Yes.
It's a different story if this team is third in the Pacific and he's at 0.7 points per game, right? Because then people will probably start to turn on him a little bit, like, oh, you're going to leave even though you're not producing. But I don't think that'll be the case. I think we're going to be at the 35 game mark. He'll have his 50 points and we'll be stoked and hopefully in the playoff spot.
Remind me, what year did we start our show? And there's a reason why I'm asking. Was it the end of the
2021 season?
Really?
I think so.
That's the horrible Canadian. Why did we start then? That was the end of the Canadian division year, right?
Was it? Was that right? Let me check.
I'm so confused.
We've done 112 episodes. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. April of 2021.
So then PD had a slow start to the 2021
22 season.
It was very slow, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that year he only had 68 points.
Right. Okay. Do you remember that time? And I'm not trying to back it. No, I can't. I'm honestly asking you. Were we down on him or no? We were more like, oh, he's gonna shake out of this, right?
Yeah, I remember saying that he's too good for this, right? Like he's too good for this to be how this ends up, right? He'll turn it around, and he did. A little bit later than we hoped, but he fully turned it around.
Okay, so there's that, and what was crazy is the summer 2021. Okay, this all makes sense because this was right before his current contract. Yeah, this is kind of what I alluded to about 15 minutes ago. Him and Quinn Hughes missed training camp because they were negotiating their agents were their second contract. So my point is not that I expect a slow start from him. No, he's under contract. He's training like a fiend, like you said. He looks great. He keeps talking about how he's bigger, stronger, and he wants to be more impactful. So I don't worry about his physical readiness to play. He'll be at training camp. None of that's an issue. But I do worry, as much as they're saying it's not going to be a distraction, how can it not? Even a little bit. Wouldn't it be a little bit of distraction?
I'm sure it looms, right? And I'm sure he might have it in the back of his head, as we get into the season, right? Let's say he goes the first 3 games and he's got like a point, right?
Yeah.
1 point the first 3 games.
Yeah.
Do you think he's in his mind thinking, I'm in a contract year, I need points, right? Like I'm going to leave a lot of money on the table if I put up 80 points this year instead of 110, right? That might be a distraction as a portion of it, right? And you never know how the mental side of things works.
Right.
But yeah, I think it is a little bit, but I think the fact that they went in and said, look, it's technically not due till next year. I'm just going to go heads down and play.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way to do it. It's either you knock it out in like July, August,
right,
or you wait. Because you can't afford to have these things going on in training camp. Because, remember there was the whole like, oh, him and Hughes missed the bag skate and all this stuff for that Travis Green training camp. This team can't afford this year and next year. This team cannot afford to have late starts to training camp, right? This team needs to start training camp as if it's the regular season.
Right.
Because they have been slow off the line.
Parker, what's your prediction? When does it get done, and for how long and for how much? And we can change these throughout the year. Like I'm not saying you have to. This isn't part of our prediction game, but how are you feeling right now?
I bet it gets done next offseason. I don't think, unless the team is doing really well, and they just are like, hey, let's make this like an extra boon for the team, right? I think it'll be like late season, sort of like May or something along those lines. It's either going to be May or September. Like it's going to be either really early in the off season or really late in the off season. Right. Hopefully early. If he does sign here, I would say it's probably going to be. I'm really leaning towards this, like not wanting to be locked in for too long and have the ability to get a big next contract.
Yep.
Right. So I think 4 years, 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
It's probably 12 and a half.
Yeah.
A year. And then, you're looking at when he's 29, 30, then he can go 8 by, who knows what the salary cap is by then, right? Maybe he's getting 15 a year. Maybe he's getting 17 a year. Who knows if, if the salary cap's 120 by then, probably not, knowing this league. But maybe he's making 15 mil at that point.
That's pretty crazy to think, like, as nervous as Canucks fans are, think of what Austin Matthews did. He did 3, then 5 or 6, but I know it wasn't 3 and 3. His second contract already, he went long, and he actually, at the end of this season, upcoming season, he was going to be a UFA. So there were Toronto fans worried, as much as we were about Petey, magnify that by who knows how much, because you have a guy who's already a UFA, and of course, Matthews is 4 years, right? He did 4 more years at 13 and a quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the thing with Matthews is after his entry-level contract.
Yep.
Right? Or not his entry-level. No, it was his entry-level because he just got all the performance bonuses, which is why it was way more. Am I wrong? Yeah, he was a rookie in 20.
Yeah, he's only had 2 contracts. Yeah.
So, he took
5.
his second contract, his bridge deal, it just took him right to UFA. Like, they get the 4 years. And that's why there was all like, oh, he's just going to leave and go to Arizona. Or he's out of there. I I think the Leafs getting to the second round helped probably a lot.
Great point.
With
Great
him
point.
staying there. I'm
Yep.
sure that was a very valuable series win for them. But yeah, I mean, 4 years, sort of that same path, right? I mean, he turns 26 in September. He will be signing his next contract when he's 29 years old, which is sort of, again, 29 versus 30, not a big difference, but that first digit, you know, it has a big impact on contracts. Right. And yeah, Matthews will be able to go.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what, 13.25 a year?
Yep.
Yeah, what's stopping that from being 8 by 16, $17 million at that point?
Right. I love how Matthews' contract went. Yeah, his cap hit was only $925, but you're right. He ended up with bonuses. He ended up making $4 million a year in his ELC, which is pretty darn impressive.
That's why I was confused looking at cap friendly, because AAV was like almost $4 million. So that doesn't make any sense.
But the cap,
So early round pick performance bonuses.
I really like this point by Ricky. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but he says if PD struggles and the Canucks are doing well despite that, then Ricky's suggesting maybe PD will have no leverage. And, you know, no is kind of absolute. I think what Ricky's saying is maybe his leverage is a bit weaker.
A little bit, but I don't think one bad year, especially if the team is doing well, I don't think that's going to hinder his leverage to that level.
Right.
He's still the star player of this team.
Yeah.
He's going to be going into the last year of his RFA rights. Yeah. He will, and there will be teams lining up out the door to get him, especially if he's going to be a UFA. I think he's going to have a ton of leverage no matter what. Unless he puts up like 40 points. Unless he pulls a Huberdeau, right? If he puts up 55 points this year in 80 games, okay, then there's going to be some question marks. Yes. But even then, there's going to be teams taking a gamble. Like, hey, we can do, you know, teams give some bad contracts out sometimes, right? Yeah. Teams are going to be willing to do, okay, well, let's just do like a 6 by $11 million a year because guess what? We think he's going to bounce back, right? Just take one team to do that. Right. Maybe two if they're competing.
And Ricky, thoughtful guy, so I have a lot of time for Ricky's arguments, but I would say generally it's not going to be, there's never going to be, I don't think there's going to be a combination where the Canucks are doing very well and PD isn't part of that equation. I just don't see that happening.
That would be tough. Yeah, they'd have to have some real, Demko would have to have like a 920, right? and like Philip Hronik would have to be putting up 80 points. And it would be like a lot of things. And JT Miller would be 99 points again. And Kuzmenko scoring 50. Like everything would have to go right if Elias Pettersson's. I mean, look at Calgary, right? They get Matthew Tkachuk. They bring in Huberdeau expecting 115 points. They get 55. Yeah. And, you know, if Huberdeau had 60 more points, how many more points do the Calgary Flames have? Right?
Isn't it funny when we talk like that? If Huberdeau had doubled his points, because he could have. Because
that's what he did the year prior.
That's crazy. Okay, I got one more question about this PD thing, which is there's so many layers here. Does this at all or completely affect captaincy talk? Now, whether you're of the mind that he was a favorite, he was a favorite, the favorite, or maybe you don't give it to a guy because who might not even sign here long term, but you just had a guy, you just traded your captain last season. So or maybe it doesn't affect your thinking at all, Parker. How does captaincy hinge on this, if at all, for you?
Yeah, it depends on when you're naming the captain, right? Okay. If you're doing it coming into this year and he doesn't have a contract in place and there's signs that he's going to walk to UFA, no, you can't. You know, you're not going to have him as the captain for 2 years and through a contract dispute and all this stuff, right? However, if they don't name a captain at the beginning of this year and they name it at the start of next season and they've just signed Elias Pettersson to a 6-year extension, right, or even a 4 or 5-year extension, then I think that it shouldn't have any impact. I'm not saying that they would name him as the captain, but I'm saying that then it wouldn't play a role.
So where are you in your captaincy rankings right now, your power rankings?
I think Hughes is at the top.
Yeah.
And I think Pettersson's probably number 2.
Yeah.
And then
Miller 3.
And then I don't think it matters after that. Because they're both here.
Yeah, that's true. I'd agree with you. I think if I did this 6 months ago, I'd have PD and Hughes reverse, but we've seen talk about Hughes. I'm not sure if you've seen the whole 6-minute clip of The Canucks following him around his hometown of Michigan. It was pretty.
I did not.
It was
see
okay.
that.
Yeah, it was okay. And nothing earth shattering there. It just shows him rollerblading in his garage, firing shots. Yeah, it was fun. Nothing exciting.
Sweet.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's your worry level? 0 to 10. You're the one who put up the nice thumbnail. You titled the episode.
Well, yeah, nothing else has happened in the last 2 weeks. I had to get the people in here somehow.
I know, and you have. There's 85 people. But what's your worry level? What's your actual worry level?
My actual worry level. So if it was team performance independent, my worry level would be fairly low. It would be like a 3 or a 4.
Right.
However, I'm really worried that the team, which I think will be decent this year, won't be good enough. Right? Especially if we're talking like near the halfway point, right? Like maybe they're hanging around 4th in the Pacific, then they make a rally at the end, they make the playoffs. But maybe all these conversations are happening in January, February, and the team is, right around 500, like a game or two above. I think that's really realistic. And then the fact that it does seem to hinge so much on team performance, which fair enough, that brings me up to like a 6.5, I would say. Okay.
Yeah. To answer my own question, if I'm talking about, am I worried that he's not going to sign here long term? Yeah. Am I worried that he's not going to sign? No. I believe maybe I'm being unreasonable or overly optimistic. Parker, I'm 0% worried that he's going to say, pay me for a year and then I'm gone. I just don't think that's the way he is. But anything less than 6, 7, 8 years, it does worry me a little bit. But it's obviously his prerogative. We just spent half an hour building up that case that it's his right, and he deservedly so. So am I worried? Yeah, I'll put myself in the 5 category as well. Not worried he's not going to sign, but am worried that he's not going to sign for as long term as we may want him to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So we knocked out 30 minutes with that. That was fun.
Yeah.
Now, all the other stuff that happened in the last 2 weeks in the Canucks world. Yep. That was it. So we can, I don't know if has anything else happened in hockey? Do we have any news in the last week in the hockey world? I know there's lots of like 2025 World Cup talk. I'm not doing any roster projections at this point for that. Right. There's been so many debates about who the best goalie of all time is. It's Hasek. Let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So many of these like sort of useless conversations, but it might be good for the people if they have some questions, some topics that you want to bring up.
Yeah.
Now would be a good time to do so. Clay, unless you have something that you want to chat about.
People, awesome. People can start peppering their questions, or not peppering, putting them in the chat. But I will ask you, Parker, we kind of joked about it at the top of the show. I just want to get your sense on the in-arena improvements. And more importantly, we don't have to go through each one of them. We just know it's a brand new screen that's cornerless. So it's rounded on the edges, so you're not going to be stuck staring at a corner for the whole game. We know of a new video ring beam that they're calling it. We know of monitors in the concourse at the entrance of every section. So if you're lining up during play, you can actually watch what's happening instead of just staring at, or whatever. So those are the kind of things. And then they talk about the dashers, the penalty boxes, the benches. Fine. And then the big 60-seat VIP. And then next summer, they start phase 3, which is all the seats in Rogers Arena becoming black. So having said all of that, do you notice those things? Like, is it a big thing for you to game presentation, scoreboard, video ring beam? Like, does it actually enhance because you're a fan who understands the game. You don't need to be wowed by the bells and whistles, but I must admit, maybe because I have ADHD or something, I really like that kind of stuff. I do
too. I think there's once you get to a certain level, it's fine, right? Like once you get to the bare minimum, right, where it's not detracting, then I don't care as much. Again, especially if the team is good, that helps a lot. What I have noticed is going to a couple of other rinks lately. That's when you really notice these things, right?
Right.
You go to Seattle, and
that thing's huge.
Yeah, and you're like, and you walk in, and before the game even starts, you're like, wow, this is sweet. Like, this building is unreal, right? Even going to like Wells Fargo Arena in Philadelphia last year. It was like, oh wow, it's actually pretty nice in here, and like, oh, they have a really big screen. They have a huge screen in Philadelphia, and it's like, yeah, you notice these things, right? But I think if you're someone who's going to 5 to 10 games a year, which is usually in the range that I'm in, it's nice, but I don't care much afterwards. I think a bigger screen is good for like replays and stuff like that. Like bigger screen is better. I say this as someone who's like looking at 75-inch TVs for moving, right? I like a big screen. That's great. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna bring people into the building. I think it's gonna enhance the experience for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I don't think anyone's going specifically for the screen, although people did not go tonight specifically because of the screen. But I don't think anyone's going for the screen. But you're right. Once you sit down there, I'm with you. You walk in Seattle and you can't help but be in awe of that thing. Once you're there, it adds so much. You don't really think about it in between games. But it makes a huge difference. You like think of the little piddly thing that was at Pacific. That was 40 years ago, but the Pacific Coliseum. Then I don't think it was going to a screen. Wasn't it like all digital light bulbs?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we're of the same boat. Then helps us, enhances, but we're not losing too much sleep over it in between games.
Yeah, I think it'll be nice. I hope the seats are more comfy. But the thing is, like, you go to BC Place and suddenly your bar is so much lower, right? you watch a 3-hour BC Lions game there, and it just hurts because it's all plastic. But yeah, I mean, some of these ones are falling apart, so it'll be good to get those upgraded.
Good. And just before we get to the questions, our buddy Sagar's Rage, $5 donation. Thank you. And let's start us off, Parker. Will Bedard walk to free agency in a few years and become a Canuck as a UFA? Well, that's 7 years. Sagar's Rage, a few years is 7 years in this case, and it's way too early to say, I think.
Maybe when he's like 34. I don't think it just doesn't happen, really. I mean, it happened with Tavares, right? That's one example. But yeah, everyone said it would happen with Matthews. It didn't. Everyone says it with basically every player that because they're hopeful, right? Minnesota said it with Brock Besser for how long, right?
Good point.
It's going like everyone gets excited and you hope it will happen.
Yeah.
But there's 20 or 31 other teams out there that also want his services and
Parker, speaking of 35-year-old centers from Chicago, what happens if do you sign Jonathan Toews for $1 million to play on a fourth line center?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, sorry. We double clicked it. You go ahead.
Sorry.
All good.
No, I don't think that's where the Canucks need help.
Okay.
I think, Can you get a good number 6 right side defenseman for $2 million and then trade Tyler Myers?
That's fair. All right. Peter starts us off. Is Petey going to break our hearts and tell us, yes, I love you, but I'm sorry I'm going to leave you? Well, we just talked about that for half an hour. Second, do you think Tocchet will set a better tone for the team than Boudreau did?
Tone-wise, probably. I don't know how much I struggle to put stock into coaches just because it does seem so hit or miss to me. And it's like every single one of these coaches, like every coach except I don't know how many first-time coaches there are in the NHL right now.
Yep.
They've all been fired from somewhere else, right? They were all not good enough for someone else. It's a big carousel, right? So the thing is, I think really the most important thing is fresh voice. That'll last a few years. There's a few guys who are exceptional, and that's helpful. And the thing is, I think Boudreau was one of those guys for the right teams. Not this one, I don't think, but still. So I think the fresh voice will help, and I think he will have a very strong focus on conditioning and coming into the season ready. And I think that's one of the most important things for this team is not starting slow, and I think he'll help with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's really hard because obviously we're not in the room, we're not on the ice. You can't underestimate the impact of coach. Yet all these players, they play the game so well, especially the high-low ones. They're so smart. sometimes you just need a coach there, whether it's motivation or just to point out one thing you might not notice. But does he make or break of the season? No, I don't think so. Having said that, yeah, you want a good tone coming out. We thought we had that with Boudreau at the end of last season, and we saw what happened this year. So Tocchet seems to be saying the right things, and the players seem to have bought in. And if you're getting guys like Miller on board and talking about being less distracted, then that's obviously a very good thing. So I'm with you, but you're right. Focus can be on PD, Demko, and the cast of characters on the ice more than the coach.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yep. Sigur's Rage, man. He did another 2 donations.
If you want to pull this up.
Yeah, thank you. If there's a Miller regress, it puts more pressure on PD. Makes management look dumb for trading Horvat. Yeah, we won't go there yet, but you're right. Miller's year 1 of 7, so be ready. And then, wait, did he donate twice and ask the same question? Well, that's very kind of you. I'm not sure if it. Regardless, Sigur's Rage, thank you.
Looks like it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And don't worry, we are going to read some of you that don't give a donation, but traditionally we do.
Yeah, the Miller one's interesting, right?
Yeah.
So he had 99 points, and then he signed that extension. Last year he had 82 points, and now the extension kicks in.
Yeah.
The thing is, he's already 30. But yeah, I think Miller's going to do fine this year. He's very low on my concern lists because
Agreed.
even when he wasn't playing well, he was producing. And I think that's pretty important. And I think he solved. I mean, he was never a big point producer until he was in Vancouver, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, like, he hit his first snag of adversity, right? Where, he was struggling very much so defensively. And for the most part, he fixed it, right? Like, he got better as the season went on. My hope is that he learns from that and he evolves from that. And those are completely a thing of the past, right? He's crossed that bridge. That won't be a problem. Now he can go back to producing. Because, if you have your second line center producing 80 points a year, he's worth the money at that point, right? As long as he's not a liability. And I think he's gotten past that. At least I hope. Might be wishful thinking. But
Great point about the liability. He's past that. Temper problems are solved because Colin Delia is no longer on this team. Spartan says, Parker Clay, are you guys going to Young Guns or the Young Stars? I am not, Parker.
Where is that in Penticton?
Yeah. Third week of September.
Yeah. Most likely not.
Yeah. Ryan says, who has a higher ceiling, Podkolzin, Höglander, or Klimovich?
I
That's
think
a good
it's
question.
Höglander.
Yeah.
Podkolzin strikes me as someone who could just end up as a third line guy.
Right.
But I think Höglander has more offensive upside. I think Podkolzin might have a higher floor right now, though.
I agree with you. I think in 10, 20, 15 years from now, when we're older and still doing this show, we could very well be saying that Podkolzin lasted longer in the league, but Höglander gave us more, excitement memories. Because you're right, Höglander has top 6 skill. Podkolzin, despite being drafted way higher, might be a third liner, and that's might be what he is. Yeah. I agree with you.
Like I said, you're on a roll here if you have more to pull.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going in order, but because everyone's doing good. They're doing great questions.
Because I've lost where we are, so you're in charge.
Well, scary thing. If Miller can show you capable second-line center, will the Canucks make the playoffs? Absolutely. It's not just based on that. There's so many other things, Demko, penalty killing, everything. But, as Parker kind of just outlined, if he holds his own point a game, that's outstanding for a second-line center.
There's a lot of places where this team can fall apart, right? We've sort of... Looking at the players that are on this team, if they all play good to their level, it's a playoff team, right? If they're all below their normal, it's probably not a playoff team. They don't have enough talent to get over that.
Yep.
And there's a few exceptions, right? If Demko falls apart, then it doesn't matter, right? If Pettersson falls apart, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But these are players that can also carry if other players go wrong, right? If Demko's outstanding, then, JT Miller putting up 60 points this year, they probably get past that, right?
Yes.
So there's a few players who are much more important than others. JT Miller is one of them. But but it's not I don't think he's the make or break, but I think he's definitely an important piece.
Absolutely. I agree. By the way, everyone, I would, many of you asking multiple questions, which is great. I'm going to try my best to highlight at least one per person, and then we can go back for doubles. I just want to spread the love. Carol asks us, Parker and Clay, have you heard anything about injury updates on Demko and a few other players? Please tell me what you know. Well, Carol, thankfully, it's the start of the season, and we are not aware, aside from Tucker Pullman and his concussion and neck issues, and Tanner Pearson, depending on who you talk to, ready for training camp, still not going to be ready. Those are the only two we know for sure. Mikheyev ended the season on IR, but he promises to be good to go. So as far as I know, Parker, it's Pullman and Pearson, the two Ps, and Demko should be fine to start the season.
Yep, sounds right to me.
Good. Look at this. Kai's a good one. Hypothetically, if we're in a playoff race at the trade deadline, would you be okay to see management trade futurists for help? I'm not a fan of just squeaking in, but it seems like a big season for our team.
There's a lot to take in there, right? It depends how important you think this season is. If you are thinking we lose Elias Pettersson if we don't win a bunch of games here at the end of the season, right? And we need some help, right? Then sure, right? Then these futures aren't as important. I mean, what futures do they really have for the most part, right? Are we talking, you know, a Klimovich move, right? Are we talking, you know, like an Elias Pettersson defenseman move, right? Like what type of move is this? Is really the important part, right? Or if it's just draft picks, right? If we're just talking draft picks,
right?
Draft picks don't matter as much to me anymore because they take too long. I mean, you look at what this team's window is going to be, right? Yeah. I mean, you have JT Miller on this 7-year contract, right? Where he'll probably be his most effective for the first 3, maybe 4 years of that. You have Elias Pettersson, who is only under 2 more years of club control, technically. You have Besser with 2 years left on his contract. You have Hughes with 4 years on his contract, right? You're starting to look and you're saying, okay, well, maybe their window right now, it's probably only the next 4 years or so, right? Like that's about where their window currently is. But yeah, obviously you can make moves to adjust that. But in 4 years, you know, Demko will be a UFA. He'll be 31 years old, right? Like there's a bunch of, you know, obviously you can extend it, but that's sort of their window.
Yep.
So if you're thinking, you know, a 20th overall first round pick isn't even going to play for you for 4 years. This is our window. Now's the time to add a guy, and maybe he's a guy who has an extra year term or a guy that you think you can re-sign. Then I don't hate it. Yeah. But the Canucks need to show something. They can't just be in the race and third in the Pacific. They need something that shows like, oh, they might just need a couple more pieces to get somewhere, right? It's not that, you know, Pettersson's been kind of struggling, but Demko put up a 918 and the team's not producing and the penalty kill's still at like 76%, but the goaltending's been really good, so they're winning enough games to hang in there. It needs to be, oh, this team is like, they're actually showing something. They're showing that they can be dangerous. They just have this one hole or 2 holes that are really costing them some games. That's where I'd be okay with it. Not just, we're hanging on to the second wildcard spot. You know, let's add another 2 guys so we can make sure that we squeak in. That's less exciting to me.
Yeah. And the fact that the Canucks don't have any prospects where you would say are completely untouchable. Yeah, we want Villander to turn out, obviously. We want Lekaramaki to turn out. We want Seelovs, who's we think he will turn out, but there's no one that says, oh my gosh, if you trade that guy, we're done. And that's kind of a bad indictment on some of our drafting. But, you know, so I kind of agree with you. I do agree with you in that if it makes sense, but you got to give up quality to get quality. If we don't have a lot to give up, so you're right. Maybe it is high draft picks that we're trading, but let's cross that bridge when we get to it. Yes. Related to that, Ricky says, do you think the 9-game homestand in March solidifies a Canucks playoff spot? I think it's certainly not going to hurt. Like you got to do well there, and I don't think this team's going to be good enough to sew up a playoff spot before that. So yeah, that's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much at the schedule itself.
Yeah.
My fear is that that means they're going to have a lot of road games early in the season, potentially. However, if the Canucks are in the mix and they have a 9-game homestand coming up, great.
Yeah.
Right. But if they're, if not having those 9 games earlier sets them farther back, then, they still play 41 home, 41 away.
Right. Yes.
But if they're in the mix, that'll be a big thing. But when's the last time the Canucks had meaningful games in March? It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
And then their bubble one, they stopped playing in March and they
and those games, they were starting to fall apart before then.
I know. They got in. Yes. They got in by points percentage, not by points. Hello, Jastrin from Mexico. Thank you for tuning in. Ivan says this. If someone told you a few years ago that Eichel would win a Stanley Cup before McDavid, what would be your reaction? So truly, for me, I'd be a tiny bit surprised, but then I'd hope I'd be mature enough to realize, not saying you're immature, but people are, but I'd hope I'd be mature enough to realize that it also depends on circumstance, what team you are on, who you're playing with, and not just the player itself.
I would have said, Jack Eichel got traded out of Buffalo.
Yeah, that's another way of putting it.
And then it's like, okay, well, McDavid's still playing for Edmonton. It would have been like, yeah, that's not super surprising, because it's just one of them getting traded to a contender.
Ethan Bear coming back when he's up and running. Oh, sorry, let me start that again. Ethan Bear coming back when he's up and running again. I'm sorry, Steel Dog. I just butchered your question. Who gives him a look?
It's an interesting one. Still UFA,
yeah,
which is surprising to me.
Didn't Arizona do that funny tweet a week ago about does a bear live in the desert or something? Maybe and then people were speculating that it's going to be Ethan Bear, but
I missed that. But I feel like there'd be more smoke around something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I would be very happy if Ethan Bear came back. I mean, he made 2.2 last year. What was his qualifying offer supposed to be? Remember, it was like 2.5 or something.
Oh, you know what it was? Their tweet, Parker, was, "Does a bear belong in the desert?" And they announced the re-signing of a coach who I guess has a nickname of Bear. I guess, I don't know.
Oh, that's less fun.
Yeah, very bad.
So his qualifying offer was going to be $2.2 million, which clearly the Canucks didn't want to pay that much. But if they can bring him back at 1.7 or something like that, right? Like, I have absolutely no problem with that. I thought Ethan Bear was really good. And I'm honestly surprised that no one's picked him up.
Yeah. I guess that injury. Yeah. Obviously they're waiting for reports on the injury. Sammy says, do both of these guys, our 2019 prize draft picks, make the team this year?
Hoagland and Podkolzin? Not both. I think Hoaglander might, but I just don't see. Again, they're trying to make the playoffs, right? They need this hot start. I could see them. Yeah, I could see Rick Tocchet going with more veteran presences, right?
Yeah, especially wanting to win. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think especially if Pearson's back. If Pearson's back, then definitely not. Because there's just not enough space, unless they get rid of a winger, right? But
sure,
there hasn't been much movement on that front.
Yeah. For Nash, do you think Tocchet is the pillar? Finally, a pillar to the coaching staff stability. We've had 3 different coaches in the last 5 years. Yeah, we have Green, Boudreau, and now Tocchet.
Only if the team's good, right? If this team's abysmal this year, who knows, right? They might be trying to, they know that they don't have a huge window here to start getting good, especially if you're of the mindset that you got to make the playoffs before you win the playoffs, right? Because most teams do. Most teams don't win their first time in.
Yes.
You got to start getting the playoffs pretty soon.
Yep.
So if they're not, then you'll start to hear things swirling pretty quick.
Sure. And on one hand, the Canucks, they're not going to keep around a guy just because they don't want to fire another guy, in such a short time span. But, oh, man, if we get off to a slow start, Parker's going to be crazy between the new additions, PD. Oh, my gosh.
I just hope they're good.
Yeah,
I'm so tired of them not being good.
Yeah, they haven't been good since we started partnering up. Have you noticed that?
They weren't very good before that either.
Yeah, but that's true.
They haven't been good in 9 years. Basically.
Scott, I don't think Parker or I have sat in the new black seats. I think they're going to look fine when they're all done. It was kind of funny. There's only like 60 of them right now, but I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine.
I have not been in Rogers Arena in a while.
Yeah. Peter says, what do you think? Why did Jake Vatanen fall off from getting 6? He's simply not that good.
He doesn't have, he didn't have effort, and that's the thing. Big guys that produce really well in junior against guys who are 5 inches and 30 pounds smaller than them. Yeah, it's a red flag, right?
Yeah.
So you start playing against adults, and
great question. A great answer. Here's a great question from Zhao. How much longer will the errors of the Benning era be felt? Will it cause another rebuild?
There will always be another rebuild, eventually, right? It's a cycle. The thing is, can you make the most of it when you're at the peak of that cycle?
Yeah.
I mean, the Benning mistakes, this team could have been. They could have had a full competitive cycle by now, really, right? Yeah. And we sort of just missed one, right? It just got pushed off by a few years. Mm-hmm. So I think it's been felt, and I think it will continue to be felt for at least a couple more years, especially with that Ekman Larsson buyout.
That's the thing.
We'll feel that literally for 6 more years.
Yes.
But mostly until 2027. Right. 26, 27, or 25, 26, 26, 27 are the big years of that. But I think that's going to be it for the most part, right? There's not going to have a lot of depth coming up, but a lot of these things can be, they can be slowly fixed in free agency and with some trades and with good drafting. You get 23 guys on your roster, right?
Yep.
So you can make all the mistakes you want, but it can really be fixed in a few years, theoretically. Yeah. So we'll feel it for a bit. It'll probably be the reason that the Canucks are, 5% worse than you'd hope they would be, which sucks. But it's not gonna cripple this team until 2032 or anything like that.
Yeah, great point. And not to make people feel bad, but if you're looking at the practical, true practical, he signed Louis Eriksson in 2014-15. He gets traded, and then as part of the big Ekman Larsson trade, as Parker mentioned, and now Ekman Larsson's on our books for another, as he said, 6 years. So
and I mean, this current regime has cut out, like they said, okay, here's all the mistakes you made. Yeah. We're just fixing those. It's going to hurt for a bit, but we're just getting them. We're just taking care of them, right? The one exception really being Tyler Myers, but he's got 1 year left, right?
Yeah.
And is there anyone else that's
no?
That's really like heavily overpaid or anything like that?
No, Myers is the last one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and like the Tanner Pearson contract ends this year, and again for the 3.25, he's been fine. I think this year he'll probably deserve less, but again, it's 1 year.
Right. And I guess I'm thinking like the Quinn Hughes contract that we got to give props to. That was done by Benning. But Garland's contract was though too, right? The 5 year, the 4.9.
Yep.
Yeah. Who did the Besser one?
Deal.
Who did the Besser one? The 6.
The Besser one was definitely Benning, wasn't it? Or was that no? That was only a 3 year deal. That was Elvin.
Yeah, it was. Okay.
That was Elvin. That was July of last year.
Gotcha. Think the flat. This is a great question. Think the flat cap prevented much needed roster moves to change the team culture? Well, it didn't help. Yeah, the thing is, everyone had the same thing to deal with, but the Canucks were in this situation where they were so reliant on the cap going up because of the bad cap moves that were made that the Canucks were affected more than some other teams, right? The flat cap really sort of just held a lot of things in place. Sure.
And just, because I was saying, like, you can sort of fix things with some moves over a couple of years, really, and make the team your own. But if every other team is hesitant to make any moves because the salary cap isn't changing, right, then it's different, right? Yeah. But that should be a thing of the past in a couple of years.
Sure. Boudreaux's taking Rutherford in a fight, right? Like he knows all these wrestling moves, and Rutherford's old. Well, they're both
size
old,
is important. in fighting. There's a reason there's weight classes in MMA. It's
Okay, back on track. Which team in the Pacific Division do you think has the highest chance to falter for the Canucks to get in the playoffs? So we remember that it was Vegas, it was Edmonton, Seattle got in, and LA got in, right?
did LA get in? Yeah, they did. They did get in. Yeah, and then the wild card was Seattle, Winnipeg.
Right. Okay. Right.
I could see. So if we're talking Pacific Division, yeah, it's Vegas, Edmonton, LA, Seattle. Who could falter? Seattle could falter.
Seattle.
They were good though.
But we have Susie now. They don't.
Yes, we've stolen their best player for sure. Yeah, Seattle could falter. Vegas won't. At least not this year.
No, Vegas, Edmonton won't. There's no way.
Edmonton won't. LA could, but they outperformed how I thought. They did much better than expected to the point where it's like, well, they're just good, right? They put up 104 points. The Canucks had to make up 20 points of ground on them. I think Calgary stays out unless the thing that's scary about that though is Huberdeau could come back and put up 120 points and suddenly they're back in the mix. Yeah. But they're just old as a team, right? Like all of their best players are aging out. So I don't think Calgary's pushing. There's really if 4 teams make it from the Pacific, it's going to be 4 of, in my mind, like Vegas, Edmonton, LA, Seattle, Vancouver, right? Like I don't think Calgary's improving. They wouldn't need to improve by much. They need to get 3 more points to make the playoffs, essentially. But I don't see them improving. But yeah, the Canucks would have to pass then one of the other ones, right? Or if the Central's bad again, right?
Right.
And then they just take wild card 2. And you go 5 and 3. That's
a lot of people are saying that.
Possible.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that. Who reaches 40? Kuzmenko, Petey, or both? I think Kuzmenko does again. I do.
I think who will reach more realistically, which is the specific of that question. More realistically, I think it's Pettersson.
Yeah.
Even though he's never done it. I mean, he had 39 last year.
Yeah. What did Kuzmenko have? 40.
Kuzmenko had 40-something. Kuzmenko had, I can tell you in a second, he also had 39.
Oh!
They both had 39.
Okay.
So
I don't know, man.
Pettersson.
Yeah, I have time for that argument. I also think Petey's such a better setup man than Kuzmenko is. You'd think it'd go that way, but obviously it depends on their line mates, too.
He's also just such a better player, though.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I think he'll excel, especially if Mikheyev's good.
Good point. I changed my answer. I agree. I say PD too.
Excellent.
Wow, we did pretty good. We got to an hour and 2. Yeah.
We did pull it off. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your questions. You were very helpful because we obviously ran out of things to talk about pretty quick. The plan, as of currently, next weekend is a long weekend, with the Monday being a holiday, and I am moving next weekend, so we will probably skip next weekend for my sake. And then after that, let me quickly check my hockey schedule. I should be fine.
Parker,
it's not loading anyways. But
so technically, does that mean when we start on September, whatever it is, 10 or whatever, is it
11th?
Is that the start of our 3rd full season?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, 3rd full season. Yep. We will take a hiatus next Monday. We will be back the 11th at 10 p.m. All of my hockey games are not on Mondays in September, so we will go all Mondays in September.
I got nowhere to go. I can't even move, so I'll be here. In fact, I might just sit here until September 11th, so yes.
But yeah, if you enjoyed the show tonight, make sure you're subscribed, hit like, say some words in the chat or the comments after the fact. If you missed any part, feel free to rewind back to the beginning, or you can find it on your favorite podcast platform in a matter of 10, 15, 20 minutes or so. Clay, any parting words this evening?
Parker, good luck with the move. Rogers Arena, good luck with the new video board and Drake's concerts. Hope those work out. And yeah, we just continue staying strong, staying the course, Canucks fans. Pretty soon, in fact, by September 11th, we're already looking ahead at young stars, at preseason, at training camp. It's going to get hot and heavy, but we got 2 more weeks before that happens.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Thank you very much for joining. We'll see you next time.